Hey everyone, I'm coming to you guys today from San Diego, California. Let me know if the birds get too loud or you can't hear me. I can move inside, but I thought I'd go outside because it's a beautiful day today, and we've been having some rain, so I'm excited to see the sun again. So lots of things to talk about today. You guys can ask questions whenever you want. I thought I'd just start with explaining a little about who I am and my volleyball journey and what helped me get to the places I got to. So this is my home, San Diego. Born and raised in a great volleyball community in Southern California. My mom was a volleyball coach and my older brother played, so I've been playing volleyball since I was born, basically, or wishing that I could when my mom wouldn't let me out on the court when I was little. But yeah, so I grew up started playing club when I was 10 years old, and was fairly small at that age, so mostly was a defensive specialist and a setter till I grew in high school, and they started letting me hit. And then I went to college and I got small again. So I played up through high school and club here in Southern California, and then got recruited to go play at Stanford, which was the coolest thing. And so played there for 4 years. I was a little bit unusual as a player, especially these days. I feel like everybody has their position and their best skill, and that's the only thing that they do. And I got to Stanford my first year, and they made me a defensive specialist. I went in right back for the opposite when she got to the back row. My sophomore year, I became a setter, and set a 6-2 for the first half of the year, and then set a 5-1. Then my junior year, we needed an outside hitter, so I went and did that, but kept setting too, so we made up our own kind of modified 6-2 so I could do both things. Then senior year, I set and hit, and then I went to the national team and became an outside hitter, which is not your typical, I think, volleyball journey, but to me it was always about what is going to help our team win right now. And every year, when I was in college at least, that changed, given the holes that we had on our roster, and so my job was just to fill those holes as best I could. I was thinking too about, before I joined this call, because I know Great Plains is the Nebraska region, and I know that some of you guys are joining from other places, but I've obviously played with some great players from that area and from those colleges, Jordan Larson and Caleb Banworth, Kelsey Robinson, but also, since we're speaking about college at the moment, one of my favorite people ever is from Nebraska, Gabby Ailes. She was my libero and teammate at Stanford, and is currently actually a nurse in New Orleans working in critical care, so is the exact person that I would want helping out myself or a loved one if they were in the hospital, so we appreciate her doing that. I was also thinking about the first time I played in the Midwest, which was at Nebraska my sophomore year. Preseason my sophomore year, we played a tournament against Nebraska and Texas in Omaha, and it was our first match of the season. And again, the first season I had more of a supporting role, and then I became the starting setter, and we had just come off a season where we played in the national championship, and we had lost to Penn State, but we'd been one of the best teams in the country, and the only people who really graduated were our setter and our middle. And so I was the new setter, and my roommate for the trip was the new starting middle, and we played Nebraska our very first match and got just smoked. We got swept. They won in 3, and we went back to our hotel room that night, and we're like, oh my God, we are going to be the downfall of Stanford volleyball. The two of us. Everybody's going to hate us. We went from this incredible team to just scoring, 15 points a set. This is the worst thing that's ever happened. And then the next time we went back and we beat Texas handily and played really well. So I think our moment of panic was unnecessary, but definitely lit a fire under us. And then 3 years later, when my teammate who was the middle had graduated and I was a senior, they redid our locker room, put all of the All-Americans up on the wall, and I took a picture of both of us up on the wall of Stanford volleyball and sent it to her. So we didn't bring about the ruin of the program. And luckily, my last game I ever played in Nebraska, or in the Midwest in general, was for Team USA, and I walked away with a gold medal. So we're all good now. So that was my college career. It was, like I said, a little bit atypical, and the thing about me, I think, in my whole volleyball career is that I am not particularly athletically gifted. Some of you out there might be 6'4" and can jump out of the gym, and if so, congratulations to you. That's not the body I was given. So I am 6 feet tall, decently athletic. I jump okay, but compared to the people I played with and against, was not necessarily going to be physically dominant at any time. And I know that you guys talked, or may have heard last week from Dustin Watton from the men's national team, talked a little bit about mindset during the game. And for me, it was those kind of mental skills and the IQ around volleyball that was just as important, or maybe more important, than my physical game, because that was how I was going to compete with the players I was playing against. Yeah, great question. How did playing multiple positions help my volleyball IQ? I think it's huge. I mean, growing up, I never really understood how people could separate out the game into different spots. Like I had teammates who played middle maybe and only knew exactly where they were supposed to stand in the rotation, or only really understood their part of the game. And to me, it doesn't work in chunks like that. The more that you understand the things that somebody else is doing, the more that you can understand the situations you're put in, because no contact within the game happens within a vacuum. If I'm passing the ball, it means that somebody else is about to set it. It means that somebody just served it. If I'm playing defense and I can understand the mindset of a hitter, that's going to help me a lot as I try to figure out where they're going to hit the ball. So being able to see the game from different perspectives, I think, is really valuable. And not every kid is going to grow up. I mean, I wish that they would grow up at least till, 12s or 14s playing different positions, but even just learning the different skills so you can understand the angles of the game and the different situations that you can be put in, I think is really helpful, or at least was for me. Like I had to switch in the middle of my college career from being a mostly full-time hitter to a setter. And I think one of the advantages that I had was understanding where hitters need the ball and what they're trying to do, which helps me put the ball in a place that's going to be most helpful for them as hitters. And it makes the communication easier because we speak the same language, and I understand their perspective. So I think that was really big in my development, and just how I understood even my role on the team and being able to say, to fill those holes that we had. I think a lot of players get stuck in the no, I just do this one thing, and if you put me anywhere else, even if it's from left back to right back, they get uncomfortable. And Mike Hebert one time said to me, we were in the middle of a USA tournament, and he said, what would we do right now if we were just out on the playground, if we were playing on the blacktop? He's like, well, what we would do is nobody would worry about positions and who plays what. They would put the right person in the right spot to help us win the game. And that's kind of how I always viewed it. But yeah, so learning about the game and all the different ways you can think it through, I think is really important, especially for younger players, because not everybody can be that kind of physically dominant, but I think everyone can learn how to think through the game in new and better ways, and learn how to see better as you're playing, because that's not contingent upon anything physical about you. It's just putting in the work and learning more about volleyball. So some of the ways I think we can do that are, like I said, first starting with just kind of what you see on the court. I don't think that we spend enough time talking about this with young players as we're training them, but it's a huge skill in the game, and it goes with every other skill. So when you're passing, for example, there's so much information that's being given to you by the server before they've ever served the ball, and as they're serving the ball before it's in the air. And having that information allows you to get to the spot sooner where you're going to pass, and gives you more time to adjust to the serve. So that could be something like where she's tossing the ball, her arm speed, her hand contact, what angle her hand is at. And the same thing as a defender when somebody's attacking. Being able to see the location of the set, if it's on or off the net, if it's inside or outside, is a really good place to start. Seeing the line of their approach and where their strongest hit is likely to be is another good way to start reading attackers. And then you can get to the arm swing and speed and contact and where they're most likely to hit the ball. But every skill has those kinds of cues that can really help you as a player anticipate what's going to happen next. And the best ways to learn are to play, which we can't do a lot of right now, to watch, which you can do some of right now, even just to watch a video of your own teams or other teams, and then just to think through if I'm in a certain position, if I'm doing a certain skill, what are the kinds of things that could help me as I prepare to do this? What's the information that I could be getting that I might not be looking at right now? So I'm going to take a quick break from that. The next question is, did I ever take up beach volleyball? A little bit. I'm from San Diego, and so it's obviously a big part of the culture in Southern California. And I know it's a growing part where a lot of you guys are. I used to play probably a tournament a summer, maybe, when I was a kid, which was always fun. This was before there was college beach volleyball, and so it was just a chance to kind of go out, relax, and play for fun. I usually, you have to like get your sand legs under you when you play beach, and so I usually would kind of be okay during pool play, and then get in a groove right around playoffs, and then we'd do pretty well. But I always loved those. And then when I was back at Stanford, I went back and coached for a year. For those of you who have watched some college volleyball the last couple of years and seen Jenna Gray and Catherine Plummer and Morgan Hentz and Adriana Fitzmaurice, they were freshmen when I coached. And when I was up there, I would play beach with Lauren Fendrick and Carissa Cook, who were on the AVP, and help them train a little bit. So I never decided to take it up professionally, and I never played super seriously, but I love it, and it's a really fun game. Again, for those of you joining, feel free to put in any questions that you might have. So going back to a little bit of the ways that you can think about the game, I think the other thing is just to examine the situations that you're put in, the decisions you have to make. Volleyball is a series of decisions. And so, particularly for positions like that aren't reactionary, like setting and hitting, where you're making a lot of different choices, and understanding the range of choices that you have is a really good place to start. Like, I remember doing an activity when I was in college where I wanted a larger shot selection and to really understand what my best options were in each different situation. And so I just wrote out a list by situation of the different shots I might hit. So if I'm hitting on the left side and the set goes outside the net, what's the best shot right then? If it's inside a little bit, what are my options? I can go, a roll shot to the middle, deep corner, a shot not back to the line. If it's a perfect set, what are my best options? If it's a perfect set with the block fully closed, what can I do? And so going through that kind of whole process in my head without being on the court and being in the middle of a play I think was really helpful just for me to kind of envision what the options were, so that when I got there, I had a list to go, okay, right now I want to do this. And the same for setting, which is, even more complex, but really helped me to just go through, okay, in what situations do I want to set a certain ball, and what's the strategy behind my offense? So those are good things that you can think through without ever having to touch a ball, which is nice right now, obviously, when we can't be in the gym. But you can even walk through it. I used to walk through the gym without a ball and just think about on the court, walk through my approach and think about where I would hit it if this was happening, and imagine kind of a whole game in my head, which would be a good skill to have right now. What setbacks did I experience throughout my career, and what advice would I give athletes who are experiencing frustration? I think for me, well, I'll answer in a couple ways. First, anytime that you go up a level, unless you're incredibly gifted, you almost start from scratch a little bit. So whether that's becoming a freshman in high school, a freshman in college, when you first start on the national team, you come from a place maybe where you're pretty good, and all of a sudden you're definitely not the best one in the gym, or the one who the team revolves around. And so I think each of those moments is an opportunity to improve and learn, but can be really frustrating if your identity is wrapped up in how good you were in sort of the previous step that you were in. And so for me, I think it's a couple things. One is remembering, especially at young ages, that for me it was like, I might be a big fish, but I'm in a small pond, even though San Diego has a great tradition of volleyball. I can't think too highly of myself for being good in this one little area when there are so many great players in the sort of larger ocean. And so just having that perspective and a little bit of humility around, like, I might be good, but there's always somebody better out there, and I just want to keep improving so that I can compete with all of those other great players, or beat some of those other great players. So that's the first thing, is before you even get to the next step, having that kind of perspective and humility about where you're at, and understanding that there's always more to learn. And then once you're in it, in that moment that can be kind of frustrating where you're not the best, you have to allow yourself to kind of sit in that discomfort, and really commit to the learning process, which is something that Karch really emphasizes on the national team. Rule number 1 of our gym was we are all learners, including him, and he's, arguably the best to ever play the game. And so being willing to not be great at something, and keep working at it day after day after day, knowing that it might be months before you execute at the level that you want to, is not easy, and it's a real commitment, but so gratifying in the end. I remember I think first summer on the national team, Karch was really good about having sort of a single focus for us on a lot of different skills, and so in passing, my focus was making one move to the ball. And so the difference literally was instead of going like that, I was just going to go like that. It's an inch of difference, right? Which is what you're working on at that level. It's the same fundamentals that you might work on at 12s and 14s and 18s, but the difference just gets smaller and smaller. So that's all I was working on every time I passed a ball, every practice. And one day, Karch goes, "Okay, I think you got it. I think we can move on." And I was like, oh my gosh, it's been 3 months. I'm so excited to start working on the next thing. And legitimately 3 months of practicing that one thing and focusing on it every single rep in practice. And my passing, of course, improved, but it takes that level of commitment, and it's not easy. And then, by the way, I came back after my next overseas season, came back into the gym, and Karch went, hey, let's work on one move to the ball. I was like, okay, let's get right back into it. But if you can do that, if you can sort of buy into the process, but also not succumb to the frustration, I think that's huge. And I learned in college to really appreciate that learning process in and of itself. So I think there's different kinds of frustration. There's the like, oh my God, I can't do this. And then there's the, I don't have this yet, but I'm going to get it. And that second one is much more fun and much more enjoyable as you're working through a lot of these steps. So that would be largely my advice. And then the other thing is, I was in the national team for 5 years. I was one of the last ones cut before Rio. We hold about 24 people at any given time on the national team, and each tournament we pick a roster of 12 to 14. So I got to go to a lot of different tournaments, but I didn't get to go to the Olympics, which is obviously the dream. And so that's, a pretty huge setback, even though we know that going into the quad that at least half of us or more aren't going to get to go. And so as sort of devastating as that is, for me, my goal as I was going through the quad, which is the 4 years up to an Olympics, my biggest goal was to become the best volleyball player that I could be as of August 2016 when they chose the team. And what that meant to me was going in every single day and doing everything that I could to get better, focusing on that one thing that I needed to work on, and competing with and against my teammates and the rest of the world. And I really felt like I did that. I feel like if I just do that every day, then I'm going to be the best volleyball player I can at the end of this. And I felt like I got there. And I wasn't the right fit for that roster. But I came away from it knowing that there was nothing else I could have done. And so I think one way to prepare for setbacks is to just do everything you can and not worry about the context that you're operating in. Like if you imagine on the national team, you're competing every day with the best players in the world. Like once you make the national team, you're in a pretty much constant tryout. You don't just make it and get to hang out. And so every day you're working just to stay in the gym, just to, be good enough to play that level, and knowing that there are great players coming up behind you. And you're competing with your own teammates for just a spot on the roster, much less a spot on the court when you're playing. And so if you spend all your time worrying about that, and this goes to kids in club and high school, competing for playing time and trying to get recruited and all of the different pressures that are on us at any given time. If you get swept up in that and carried away with it, I think you're going to lose some of what you're trying to do. And the best result is going to come from just focusing on working hard and being a great teammate and doing everything that you can to add value to the team. And if you make it, you make it, and if you don't, it's because you weren't the right choice, or that wasn't the right fit for you. But there's nothing else you could have done, so why not just go for it? And I have no regrets about sort of that time in my life.
I mean, I spent a lot of time, I want to talk about sort of different skills. I spent a lot of time at Stanford learning how to be the best setter I could because I wasn't a setter growing up. And I think just understanding how offenses work, I learned that a lot later maybe than some setters, even though it was something that I thought about when I was younger as a hitter even. But John Dunning and I, who was my coach at the time, we went through a whole process around learning why to set different sets and what they should look like, and why we might choose to do it that way. So for example, I might run a one or a quick to my middle, and it could be really fast. It can be a little bit higher. It can be, a 1.5 or almost a two ball. And there's all these different options, and that make sense for different strategies and different players who I'm setting. And so really understanding that, um, and knowing really clearly what I was trying to do, um, and what my hitter and I were trying to do together helped us communicate on the court and helped us really be aware of the exact step that we were running, what it was supposed to look like, um, and sort of who needed to adjust when it didn't work well. So, knowing what step my outside hitter is supposed to be on when I release the ball. If she's not on that step, then that's the mistiming is on her. If she's on that step and we've still missed times, then that's on me. And same with our middles or any other attackers, just learning how to understand, sort of what their timing should be, when they should be up, what we're trying to do with the set that we're running, so we can have those conversations as we're playing, and they can be really clear and direct. Because I think it's important when you're on the court to have a feedback loop that is constant, with especially amongst setters and hitters, but really around everybody, which is something I thought we did really well on the national team. Was there was that constant communication of what can you do, what can I do to make this work better. Even if it's two defenders who are crossing, or a defender and a blocker, just having those conversations, because we all have different perspectives on the court and have different feelings about what's happening. And so being able to have the kind of comfort with a teammate to just have that conversation very quickly without it turning into like I'm coaching you or I'm criticizing you, I think is really valuable, and just helps the whole team, move more effectively. My favorite thing about volleyball, people ask me a lot. I have many favorite things about volleyball, but John told me one time that and we have not verified this, it's the most people on the smallest area of any sport. So if you think about like basketball, it's got 5 people on a bigger court. Soccer's got more people, but much bigger field. And I love that about volleyball, because what it does is it makes everybody have to move around each other and cover that space, in a really sort of synchronized way. And so if you don't move around each other efficiently, you're either leaving some space empty, or overloading another, or running into each other. And it's sort of the ultimate team sport, because you can't decide where the ball goes when it comes over. The other team gets to decide. And so there's no hiding. But I've always really loved the way that it requires you to move around each other, and creates that kind of flow of the game. Anybody who plays a lot, hopefully, has felt that moment when things all of a sudden click. And it's just probably my favorite feeling in the world, just to be a part of that. So yeah, I mean, other things that you would like me to talk about. Thanks for the hearts. Any other questions? Let me give you a second, and I'll think too. Okay, while you're thinking, I'm gonna tell you about a couple of my favorite matches. One again was in Nebraska, and we were in the semifinals. This was not a very happy night for the state of Nebraska, but it was very happy for us. They were the second match and lost in the semis to Penn State. But we were in semifinal against Texas this must have been 2008. And we went down 0-2. We weren't playing very well, and we came back and won in 5. And we watched the telecast afterwards, and it was the first time that had ever happened in the history of the Final Four that a team had come back to win 0-2. And they kept saying, you can never, they'll never do it. Stanford's done. And we came back and won it. And I always just remember the moment going into the 5th set when we were sitting on the benches waiting So they had won the first two. We won the third and fourth. And just looking around at my teammates in their eyes, and I can still remember the looks in their faces. And this was Feluca Akinradawo and Cynthia Barbosa and Alex Kleinman, really great players. Gabby Ailes, uh, and just seeing the looks in their faces and knowing with absolute certainty that we were going to win that match. And it gives me chills to think about still to this day. And we went into it and we won, I think maybe 15-12, and went to the national finals. And it was just the most joyous moment. But that moment right before the fifth set is what I remember, of just that absolute faith in each other, that we were going to go out there and do it in front of what was up to that point the largest crowd that I think had ever watched a volleyball game in the United States, which was really fun. So thank you, Nebraska. They were mostly Nebraska fans, I'll give you that, but which meant they were wearing red. So I felt like they were kind of our fans too. And my other favorite match was my last match for USA, which was the gold medal match at the Pan American Games in 2015. And we were up in Toronto. We were playing Brazil, who is always one of the best teams in the world. We had actually a fairly young team there. We had split our team because there were two tournaments going on. They had a few Olympians on their team, a few multiple-time gold medalists, and we had played them in pool play, won the first two, and then lost the match in pool play. And so we're in the finals, and we won the first two, and we were down 20-12 in the third, which is not something that you come back from against the best teams in the world, especially a team like Brazil that's so experienced. And we took a timeout right then, and I remember looking around the timeout and going, how great is this story going to be when we pull this off? And so we go back out and we score a couple points and score a couple more, and nothing major was happening. We weren't making crazy plays. We were just scoring a couple points at a time, and all of a sudden it's like 24 all. And then it's 26 all. And then we go and we win the third set. We win a gold medal. We celebrate with the whole city of Toronto. And it was just, again, the coolest thing. I mean, anytime you get to wear USA, stand on a podium and hear the national anthem is just such a privilege. But to do it in that way and come back in that moment, again, with that kind of faith in your teammates, I think is just, it's the best feeling. I mean, it's just anxiety inducing when you're in it, but those are sort of the best moments. And I think it's a testament to the cultures of those teams that we were able to build that faith, because that doesn't come on the day of. It never comes on the day of a championship or a semifinal or whatever it is. It comes from the first day of preseason or the first day of practice, and being in it every day with each other, so that when you get to that moment and there's 10,000 fans cheering for the other team, that you have the people beside you who you've been with every day, and they have your back, and knowing that that's all you need is really empowering. And so it was a credit to both of those teams and the people on them that we were able to come back from those moments when we were down. And yeah, will forever be my favorite moments in volleyball. And with that, any other questions that I can answer before we jump off of here? Not sure which of you is still on. All right. Well, I'm always here. I'm on Instagram at Cassidy Lichtman 7, I think, if you have any other questions. Also on Twitter at Cassidy Lichtman, and Facebook, I think. So yeah, anytime I'm around. I hope everybody stays healthy, stays in for as long as we need to, and hopefully we all get back into volleyball gyms soon. Have a great day, guys.